Hello everyone, welcome to Chatting with Coach. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get these out weekly. If I'm honest, it do involve a fair bit of time recording, researching, making all the notes. I'm going to do what I can to get at least a couple coming out over a month if I can. Now, in this week's episode, I wanted to cover metabolism because this is a bit of a boogeyman in the world of fitness, sport. There are very few sort of sports where we won't be concerned with our metabolism to a greater or lesser extent. You don't need to be focused on weight loss for you to want to understand how much energy your body burns, because there aren't that many sports or sort of pastimes where having more body fat really is beneficial. And even if it is, I suppose we want to understand, how much it is we need to gain weight. So I want to go through all this in detail to hopefully demystify what can be a really kind of confusing subject with a huge amount of, quite simply misinformation flying around it. Now, your metabolism is made up of 4 factors. So you've got the base metabolic rate, the thermic effect of food, the thermic effect of activity, which is split into training and NEAT, non-exercise associated thermogenesis. So we are going to go through all of these in a decent amount of detail. I mean, I have omitted a large amount of information because, I don't want to bore people with information they don't need to know about. However, we're going to go in to help you understand, your body. But before we get started, we're going to touch on sort of the first law of thermodynamics. Don't worry, I'm not going to stick on this for too long. I know it's a bit physics, it's a bit boring. But essentially, the first law of thermodynamics claims that energy cannot be created and existing energy cannot be destroyed. Now, if we look at, with using food as an example, we have the sun in the sky. Sunlight comes through the atmosphere, helps the plants to grow. Now, those plants provide us with energy. If an animal is a herbivore, it will eat the plants, and it therefore ends up sort of being fed. That's how it gets its energy. If it is a carnivore, the carnivore will eat the animals that got their energy from the plant. So they're still getting energy that came from the plant in the first place. So even though it's gone through a number of stages, that energy still started at the sun and has ended up giving this predator energy. And this applies to the human body as well. We cannot create energy that doesn't already exist. So every bit of body fat that's on us, it came from somewhere. But equally, we cannot destroy existing energy. Okay, it's not going to disappear on its own. And this is something that people still, I guess, they struggle to get their head around. In the one case, it's really simple, but on the other hand, it is very complex because there's a huge amount of factors outside of simply this very simple, what amounts to sort of calories in, calories out model. There's a lot more to it than that. And I'll cover, I think, some of the sort of the social and psychological side of it in another episode. But whenever we eat food, whenever we take on energy, it can either be used now or it can be saved for later. And depending on what it is that we're doing, influences which of those is true. So if I am out and I'm doing a long bike ride and I take on some food for energy, that food is going to be burnt off. It's not even going to get a look in at being stored as body fat because I am under a high level of activity. If I spend all day sat in front of the TV watching a box set whilst eating a series of takeaways, all of that food, more or less, the vast majority of it is going to be stored as potential. It's going to end up there. Okay, for those on the podcast, I was just pointing at my stomach. It's a huge sort of. There's a huge debate that kicks up around this when the reality is that in most cases, the reason that somebody's putting on a bit of weight is because they have too much energy inside of them, which they've gained from food. However, obviously, I will look into the sort of the other potential for that in a later date, and we'll touch on it a little bit in this this episode. So, we're going to start off by looking at base metabolic rate. Now, this is, if you go back to the example, in fact, no, let's go even one better. If I were to wake up one morning and I had a TV in my bedroom, which I don't, woke up one morning, I just switched the TV on. I just watched TV all day. I didn't eat. I didn't get up to use the toilet. Don't know how, but you know, for the sake of this example, didn't use the toilet. My body would still be burning as a male between 2,000 and 2,500 calories a day. Now, this is a lot more energy than most people would think. Actually, you know, how is it that the body could burn up to 2,500 calories a day from doing nothing? Well, my heart's got to beat. It's got to pump the blood around my veins. My digestive system, even if there's no food in at the moment, it's still going to be churning away, processing what I ate the day before. Okay, the body uses quite a surprising amount of energy to keep your urine sterile as well. Make sure that everything down there is still sterile. The brain activity, you know, there's just so many vital functions within the body that it needs to keep it alive. Breathing, of course, don't know how I forgot that one. These all require energy, and in the vast majority of cases, just keeping yourself alive is by far the biggest contributor to metabolism. So that, you know, could be, now for women, it could be between 1,500 and 2,000 calories. For most men, it's between 2,000 and 2,500. Now for me, I'm around about 1,800. I'm an outlier, and there are plenty of other outliers either way. However, if you were to look at an average, you'll sit somewhere around there. Now you may go, well, how is it that I find out my base metabolic rate? Well, there are calculations you can do online. If you search BMR calculation, it might take you to one where you can input your height and your weight and some other bits there, and it can give you an estimate. Or you can get it tested on a machine. Many gyms now have machines. You stand on some scales, hold on to some sort of handles, and it will do a scan through your body and let you know what it calculates your BMR as being at. It's not super important to get this super accurate unless you want to track your food, in which case it's really important that you get that number about right, because your app, your MyFitnessPal, Macro Factor, whatever it is that you're using to track your food, it will need to know the base metabolic rate. Because if we are looking at, well, between 1,500 and 2,500 being the average, you've got 1,000 calories from somebody who may have a very slow metabolism, somebody who has a very fast metabolism. And that's going to take, you know, a huge, that's a huge variation. We need to narrow it down. We need to go, look, you know, we can't have a margin of error of 1,000 calories. That's no good to anyone. We need to understand what it is. Now, I can hear a lot of you already going, and that's why it's harder for women to lose weight. It's not really. Now, the main reason for that difference is simply the size of the person. Your average male is just that bit taller, that bit broader than your average female. Talking really broad strokes here, okay? But the averages have to come from somewhere. Additionally, base metabolic rate is very closely linked to skeletal muscle mass. So that is the muscles that we see, that we train, that help us to move. The other muscles in our body are for the likes of our lungs and our digestive system. They don't count. But skeletal muscle, you know, the size of our arms, of our legs, all of this, the more muscle we have, the more we're going to burn those calories, okay? People say that muscle burns fat. We're going to get onto that a little bit later. But as we age, our metabolism does slow down a little bit. And I can hear some of you going, aha. And that's why it is that those people in middle age suffer with, you know, that middle age spread. It's why they find it harder to manage their weight. Well, your metabolism only decreases by 2 to 3% per decade. So if you look at somebody who is sort of a teenager, a lot of people go, oh, I remember when I was at school, I was so skinny. And say somebody in their 40s who now definitely has, you know, a little bit of a dad bod or a beer belly going on, and go, oh, well, you know, you get older, your metabolism slows down. Yeah, but your metabolism might have only slowed by about 5%. That doesn't account for the difference. And the reason that it is that a lot of people, as they start to get into their 30s and their 40s, that their waistline can expand, it's their habits. It is the fact that they're no longer going out, they're no longer playing with their friends. They may well not be participating in sport. They're driving everywhere now. They're taking the lift instead of going up the stairs. You know, they're going out and they're getting sort of calorie-rich takeaways and like to eat. It is behaviour that causes this, and you know, it's a little bit from diet, it's a little bit from their lifestyle, but that is the primary reason. Yes, metabolism slows slightly, but the main reason that metabolism slows in the first place is the loss of muscle mass. Okay, if you are lifting weights, if you are keeping fit, if you're staying strong, if you're doing what you can to minimise the amount of muscle mass that you lose, your base metabolic rate may remain largely unchanged from year to year. Now, I hear a lot of people who say, oh, the best way to lose weight is to gain muscle. That's what you want to do, because muscle burns fat. You know, you'll burn fat in your sleep. And yes, there is some truth to that. Unfortunately, 1 kilogram of muscle mass. So if I went to the gym and I built on so much muscle that I gained an extra kilo in muscle mass, I could end up losing body fat as well. But if I gained an extra kilo of muscle mass, that would burn an additional 13 calories per day. And when you consider that we could be burning as much as 2,500 just from being awake, that additional 13, not an enormous amount. Okay, what if I got jacked? What if I put on 10 kilos of muscle mass? That's 130 calories a day. That's a bit more impactful, isn't it? But when we consider that an apple has 52 calories in it, I mean, it's nice to have, but really it's not going to have this enormous impact on our ability to burn fat in our sleep. You know, we still have to be careful with what we eat. We have to put that muscle on in the first place. And to put muscle on, you do need to be in something with calorie surplus to give your body the resources that it needs to build that muscle. And this is how it gets complicated. Because to give your body the resources that it needs to build muscle, a lot of bulking protein shakes will come with carbohydrate in them to try and give people the calories they need to create that muscle. But you want to make sure that the calories are being used to build muscle rather than being stored as body fat. So it's a very sort of thin, it's a tightrope that you're walking along. If you have too much to eat, then your body's going to store that as fat. If you don't have enough to eat, you're not going to build the muscle. And so it really is it's very difficult to make sure that you're achieving your goals in both aspects. It can be done, don't get me wrong, plenty of people do it. I think we've all seen people who've gone through huge body transformations from hitting the gym, but hitting the gym itself is not enough. I cannot say that, you know, loudly enough. When I've had people before, they've been shocked when I tell them, look, you know, hey, we can do this exercise program, but 80% of weight loss, broadly speaking, comes from diet rather than from exercise. And people think they just grind their way through in the gym and, you know, the weight will fall off. It will help, it really will. But it comes down to the diet, it comes down to the choices that you make between the sessions. That's what really influences the progress that you make. You could have somebody super disciplined who works super hard in the gym or doing any other kind of training. But if for the other 23 hours of the day, if they're making poor choices, they're not going to see progress, they're not going to get fitter, they're not going to get bigger, whatever their goal is. Because that supportive habit is as important as what happens within that session. And yeah, there's not an enormous amount that we can do apart from sort of gain more skeletal muscle, more lean muscle mass. It's not a huge amount we can do about affecting BMR. It depends on our height, it depends on our genetics, again, to an extent. Some people are just naturally skinny and they don't tend to put on weight very easily, while some people will really struggle. Now, this does have an impact. It's not a death sentence, as it were. It doesn't mean that just because you're genetically predisposed to have a high metabolism or low metabolism, that you'll never be able to do anything. I mean, I'm around about sort of 55, 56 kilos, generally speaking, and I've got a base metabolic rate of 1,800. Okay, 1,860, I think it was when I read it last. You know, that's not super high. I'm not burning loads of calories. The reason that I am how I am, I mean, there's going to be a genetic element, and it's hard to put your finger on exactly what contributes to that. But also, I've always been active. I've always eaten in moderation. I've never really had much in the way of fast food. I don't tend to gorge myself at meals. Okay, partly could be due to my appetite. It could be lower than other people. There are all these different factors here, but it is not simply a cut and dry, oh, point the finger, that's where I'm going wrong, that's where the issue is. You know, there's a lot of factors around it. But yeah, apart from building muscle mass, which, let's face it, muscle mass is never bad. Big fan. If we have more muscle mass, then that is going to increase our base metabolic rate. Next up is something we have even less control over, fortunately. It does get better, I promise. Thermic effect of food, which is the amount of energy that we use to digest food, chewing food as it moves through our digestive system. There's a lot going on when we digest food, and that energy has to come from somewhere. So it counts, broadly speaking, for around about 10% of your calorific daily expenditure. Now, how much you eat will have an impact on that, because the more you eat, the more energy that needs to be used to digest that food. Additionally, if we are eating a lot of protein, that is harder to digest than fats and definitely carbohydrates. So we end up using more energy to digest that protein. Now, before you throw away all your carbs and fats and go, I'm just going to eat protein, okay? Having a balanced diet is more important for health than these things. But again, it's another reason to eat a good amount of protein in your diet. A lot of people are protein deficient, especially those in the older population, sort of senior citizens. I guess partly because of them sort of having a reduced appetite generally. But yeah, a lot of them, they just tend to have sort of relatively repetitive, simplistic meals that simply don't have enough protein in them. And this accelerates the amount of muscle mass that they lose. So that really is all I can say for the thermic effect of food. Now let's actually move on to the really interesting stuff. Let's look at the thermic effect of activity. Now, I'm going to have a look to start with at something called NEAT, okay? Non-exercise associated thermogenesis. Now, we have the greatest control over this factor here. There is a huge amount that I can do to affect this. Now, if this is all energy that's burned from anything that's not structured exercise, or there isn't sort of my body simply trying to survive. So as I'm going about my day, as I'm walking around the house, as I'm doing the cooking, the washing up, all of that, you know, these are all calories that are being burned. And this we should really lean into. The reason being is that we live in a society, especially if those over in America, we live in a society of convenience. Oh, yeah, there's no need to walk, we can take the car. There's no need to take the stairs, we've got the lift. Oh, there's no need to walk there, jump on the shuttle bus. You know, we have created a society where people are moving very, very little within their day because everything's been optimized, everything's been simplified to be as efficient as possible. And the result of this is an obesity crisis in many Western nations, because they're not really moving, nearly as much as they used to. because everything's become so convenient for them. And you do have to be a bit of an outlier that goes, okay, well, actually, you know what? I'm going to cycle to work. I'm going to walk instead of taking the shuttle bus. I'm going to take the stairs. You know, again, sometimes this is feasible, sometimes this isn't. You know, you can't just walk across. You can't just walk across an airport to get to your plane. Okay, if you need to get on a shuttle bus, you need to get on a shuttle bus. And again, if I'm going up 30 stories and I've got a heavy suitcase, you better believe I'm taking the lift. But if you have a choice where it's, look, you know, it's not actually taking much out of my day just to get a little bit more activity in, this is where you have the greatest control over your metabolism. Where you are going, right, okay, I need to make sure that I'm moving as much as I can. And there are lots of simple, like, little decisions that we can make in the day. So housework, again, if you hire a cleaner to come and to clean everything, then, you know, that is going to be exercise you're not doing anymore. I think we've all been there in the bathroom scrubbing away for sort of an hour, for 45 minutes. That is a decent amount of calories that you can burn doing that. You know, we can all get a bit of a sweat on when we're doing that. Gardening, again, if you have a garden or a yard, if you're over in the United States or that part of the world, getting out there, okay, picking up your tools, getting down on your knees, rummaging around, digging up plants, laying down fence posts, you know, doing things that you can safely and efficiently do yourself. Okay, it's quite easy to spend a whole day in the garden working away, and it can be quite tiring. And it's just something that you can do to fit in. Walking, so whether you are sort of walking around the house during the day, whether if you work from home, you get up once an hour just to go and do a little lap of the house to loosen things up, whether you're taking the dog out for a walk, whether you said to yourself, I'm going to go for an after dinner walk of 20 minutes every single day over the next month. Or you are, again, like choosing to walk somewhere rather than taking the bus, then these are just really, really simple ways to fit in extra walking within your day. And people say, oh, it's not real exercise. Nonsense, okay? You're moving your body. You are burning energy, okay? You are getting stronger legs, stronger lungs, okay? Yes, it's maybe not the most time efficient version of exercise. However, it is still exercise. Taking the stairs, I've already touched on this one, but you know, especially if you work in a large building, okay, rather than taking the lift, take the stairs. Okay, if you work on the 4th floor and you're worried that you're going to turn up and you're going to end up like visibly sweaty in your professional clothes that you've worn to the office, you know, before you've even started work, okay, take the lift to the 3rd floor, then climb the last floor and slowly work your way back down until you're able to stride up all those stairs without getting sweaty and out of breath, okay? Small little things that we can do, small differences, small changes that we can make. A number of us, I know myself included, when I'm on the phone, especially in the days of sort of AirPods and that where we can you sort of talk through our headphones, just go for a little wander around the garden, sort of stride up and down sort of the hallway while you're on the phone to someone. Rather than sitting still, use it as an opportunity for a little bit of movement. Cycle to work, if you're able to, of course. That is a fantastic way to be able to get some extra exercise into your day, because it's time that you be sat on the train or sat in the car. You're not actually moving your body. Okay, it may take a little longer to cycle depending on where you live, or it may actually get you there faster. If you live in a city, there's a good chance that on a bike you can get to your destination faster by bike than you would sat in traffic in a car. And if you have sort of a watch, a fitness tracker, or even on your phone, or count your steps, set yourself a little step target. You know, right, I want to hit 4,000 steps a day. Doesn't have to start with 10, hit 4,000 steps a day. Hit that regularly, okay, I want to hit 5 now. Build up the amount of steps that you take in a day and see it as a little bit of a game. You know, if you get to 8 PM and you realise that you've still got a couple of thousand steps to hit, right, I'm going to take the dog out for a second W. I'm not going to say the word because she's sat there behind me. all sorts of things that you can do to help just to include extra little bits of movement in your day. I mean, if you want to take it one step further, so you can bust out some press-ups, or it doesn't have to be structured exercise. Go to a place of exercise, get changed, have a shower afterwards. It doesn't need to be this whole like big workout piece. It doesn't have to be like that. There are lots of things that you can do just to burn calories as you're going around your day when you're not actually training for your sport or sort of exercising specifically. And if you are, if you're doing sort of jobs around the house, okay, and you have the option of using a screwdriver or using an impact driver, we'll just have a go with a normal screwdriver if you think you can do it. My garden is quite small, so I've just got a little manual push lawnmower. Okay, I get sort of a 10-minute workout whenever I cut the grass. It's a hell of a lot cheaper as well. Try to reject this idea of going for everything as simple, as convenient, as easy as it can be. But it's like people who drive recklessly and really speed on the way home. They get home and they just sit around, watching TV. They didn't actually have to get back for anything. They had it in their head. This is what we need to do. We need to drive fast. It's the same with convenience. Oh, well, I want to make things as easy as possible. I want to expend as little energy as possible. But why? When there's so many people who are looking to lose a little bit around the middle, why are people constantly going for the simplest, the easiest, sort of the laziest options, when this is a clear, small chance for us to actually improve? Looking at sleep now. Now, sleep is a difficult one from a scientific perspective because there aren't an enormous amount of studies that have been done looking at sleep. It's very hard to track. There's definitely been work done, but studies they've done, I found a study based on college wrestlers, interestingly, which is a little bit random, but again, not a huge amount out there. Found that if they have numerous nights of poor sleep, this does actually reduce their base metabolic rate. Okay, so their body it burns less calories throughout the day if they sleep poorly, which means more calories end up being stored as body fat. So if you can, getting more sleep, getting better quality sleep will help. So that's really making sure that you're in a quiet, cool space when you sleep, going to bed early, not staying up browsing videos on your phone, going, right, you know what, I just need to get to bed, I need to get some good sleep in. That is one of the best ways that can help somebody sort of improve their metabolism. Again, I had a look at some of the research. It's all a little bit inconclusive. It's all talking and maybe more research required. So I don't want to go spread what could end up being sort of half-truths, because again, there's clearly not enough sufficient evidence to support the theory. However, definitely sleep. Like if you feel that you've been sort of lazy with your sleep, if you feel that you haven't been doing what you should be doing, definitely have a look at this. Hormones. A lot of people will say, oh, I can't lose weight because of my hormones. Now, there are 3 primary hormones which affect your metabolism. So first up, you've got your thyroid. Now, low amounts of thyroid hormone can increase your body weight through no fault of your own. Your body's just not as good at it. Everything's off kilter. And so a lot of people go, oh yes, that's what I must have. I must have a thyroid problem. Well, you might. But when you consider that it also results in feeling cold, it also results in dry skin, constipation, poor mental health, muscular weakness. I think if you are suffering with all of those, if you hang on a minute, go to the doctor, get it checked out. That might be the case. But I want don't jump to conclusions and go, oh, that's what I must have. A lot of people, when they struggle to lose weight, they're looking for the reason that they struggle to lose weight. Sometimes there is one, but most of the time there isn't something that you can really they can't really put their finger on. Because when they do sort of crack the code at some point in time, whether it's working with a professional, whether it is simply having like a bit of a wake-up call and being more disciplined about it, and lo and behold, the weight does come off after all. It's again, I don't want to go into this too much. This isn't what the episode's about. But don't feel that sort of generic hormone problems are the cause of all of your issues. Now, this is something that, again, I'm covering the very basics here. You would need to see an endocrinologist, a medical professional, not some hack on social media who's promising to balance your hormones. Really sort of go to your doctor about it and see if there is something more that's going on there. Now, the other hormone that can impact you is cortisol. Now, cortisol is released when you're stressed, and it fights against insulin. And the more cortisol that's released, the more sort of blood glucose that you end up with, so the more sugar's released. And this can result in low levels of weight gain. However, it isn't, again, it's not the holy grail, it's not the source of all of someone's struggles. And the final hormone that I'm going to cover here is testosterone. Because testosterone is linked to muscle gain, if somebody has low testosterone levels and they have lower levels of muscle, their base metabolic rate will also be lower. So if you think this is you, again, if you have a low libido as well, struggle to gain muscle, mental health isn't maybe so good, these themes around low testosterone levels, sure, it might be worth getting a test, seeing if that's something that could help you. A word of warning, though, is that you would need to be careful in some sports that by taking a testosterone supplement, you could end up being picked up for performance-enhancing drugs because levels over a certain amount are considered to be an unfair advantage. That's all I've got time for this week. I've actually run out of notes in my notebook. I've been making my way through this book now for years. There are hundreds of pages of notes from client calls, ideas, business plans, all in there. I feel a little bit more emotional than I should, having finished it, but there we go. I ran out of space to notes to take, and I figured this is probably a reasonable length for an episode. Anyway, if I were to open another can of worms, I could end up going down that ending up going a little far down that path. Which I don't have time for. So thank you again for your company. Hope you found it useful. Hope you found it interesting. And I'll speak to you all soon.